Hello everyone, I am Gurudat, Assistant Professor in Indraprastha Law College. This is the second video of Law of Evidence, and in this video I will be introducing you to the Indian Evidence Act. The Indian Evidence Act 1872 was enacted during the British rule, just like the law of crime first, that is Indian Penal Code. So the main architect behind this law was Sir James Stephen. Sir James Stephen was the main person who codified the law, who studied the Indian circumstances, and more or less he implemented the English law of that period in India. Although with passage of time, many new sections were introduced, many changes were made, like electronic evidence. During that time, during 1872, there was no concept of electronic evidence, but later is what it was enacted by the Indian government after independence. And similarly, many things were added and few were deleted also. In the year 1868, a commission was set up under the chairmanship of Sir Henry Maine. He submitted that draft, which was later found unsuitable for the Indian conditions. So the first draft which Britishers tried to implement in India was found to be unsuitable for Indian conditions. Then in the year 1870, the task was given to Sir James Stephen. Now his draft was completely accepted and approved by the Imperial Legislative Council in 1872, and therefore it came into force on 1st September 1872. The Indian Evidence Act 1872 came into force on 1st September 1872. Now, just a structural outlook of Indian Evidence Act. The Indian Evidence Act 1872 has been divided into 3 parts, 11 chapters and 167 sections. The part 1 answers the question, what facts may or may not be proved. See, there are certain facts which have to be proved in court of law. There are certain facts which we don't have to prove in court of law. So section 1 to 55, that is chapter 1 and chapter 2, deals with this portion of evidence. Then comes part 2. Part 2 deals with what sort of evidence is to be given for these cases. Now, one question will always arise, that what should be the evidence given in a particular case. As I have already told you in the first video, that best evidence should be given in every case. Now the question is, what is the best evidence? Now these kind of questions are dealt in part 2 from chapter 3 to 6 and section 56 to 100. Now the part 3 covers by whom and in what manner the facts are to be proved. Now first we have decided that what facts should be proved. Then we have studied that what sort of evidence should be given. Now the third important question is, who has to give the evidence and in what manner they have to give the evidence. Now this is being done in deal with third part from chapter 7 to 11, from section 101 to section 167. Also section 5 to 55 deals with relevancy, that is what are relevant fact, what is not relevant fact. Section 56 to 167, the whole from 56 to till the end, it deals with admissibility of evidence, that is which kind of evidence should be admitted, which kind of evidence should not be admitted, all these things. Now the next important question which arises is, where does the Indian Evidence Act applies? The application of Indian Evidence Act 1872. Now the act says that it applies to all judicial proceedings in or before a court, including court martials. So it applies to all judicial proceedings in India. Now the question is, what is judicial proceeding? We'll deal it with the next chapter, next slide. First, it is not applicable to proceedings under the Army Act, the Naval Discipline Act, the Air Force Act passed by the British Parliament. It is not applicable in affidavits, mind it, it is not applicable in affidavits, and also in arbitration proceedings. I hope you know the meaning of arbitration by now, you are in 9th semester. So it is not applicable in arbitration proceedings. Now let's see what is judicial proceeding. Judicial proceedings in which Indian Evidence Act is applicable, it is any proceeding in the course of which evidence is taken on oath. Now, if you are taking evidence on oath, then that is judicial proceeding. By oath, we mean that you have to take some oath in the court and then you have to give the evidence. All those proceedings in which evidence is taken on oath is called judicial proceeding. Administrative proceedings are not judicial proceedings. Similarly, proceedings before the tribunals are not judicial proceeding. Like, I hope you know the meaning of tribunals, like NGT, National Green Tribunal, CAT, Central Administrative Tribunal, or any educational tribunal, or any kind of tribunal. In those tribunals, Indian Evidence Act is not applicable. Similarly, contempt of court. In cases of contempt of court, in Indian Evidence Act is not applicable. Although the procedure of contempt of court, the proceedings of contempt of court is more or less judicial in nature, but still Indian Evidence Act is not applicable. So, as the recent cases going of Prashant Bhushan is going on in the Supreme Court, this Indian Evidence Act is not applicable in that case. Now, one more term you will often come across while studying Indian Evidence Act is of circumstantial evidence. Now, there are basically two kinds of evidence. First evidence is something direct evidence. If you have a direct link with crime and a particular fact, then that is a direct evidence. But generally, we do not have any direct evidence present in any crime scene. Then we search for circumstantial evidence. Now, it refers to the indirect method of proving the guilt of an accused by drawing inferences from certain facts which are closely related to the fact in issue. However, the standard of proof required for circumstantial evidence is quite high, and courts usually are cautious while basing convictions upon circumstantial evidence. Now, as it says, in case of some direct evidence, the standard of proof is not very high. It directly links to the crime. But in case of circumstantial evidence, the standard of proof is to be very high, because court has to be absolutely sure that this circumstantial evidence is 100% proving the crime. Then only they can hold a person guilty. Therefore, the standard of proof has to be very high in these cases. Now let's talk about interpretation clause, which is given in section 3. What is a fact? Because while studying Indian Evidence Act, you will come across this word fact, relevant fact often. So you must understand the meaning of fact. Indian Evidence Act in the section 3 defines fact as anything, state of thing or relation of things capable of being perceived by the senses. These are called physical facts or external facts. Then any mental condition of which any person is conscious. These are called psychological facts. Now, certain physical fact is like if somebody is slapping somebody, A is slapping B, then this is a physical fact. You can observe it, you can see it, you have complete knowledge about it. This is a physical fact. Now, mental condition of which any person is cautious is like reputation. I have a certain reputation, you have certain reputation. This is a mental or psychological fact. Now, examples of fact. These examples are given in Indian Evidence Act also. If a man hears something, then that he heard something is a fact. If you are listening something, if you have heard something, then that is a fact. The arrangement of certain objects in a certain order is a fact. For example, you have kept 3 glasses in order, then that's a fact. You have kept them in order. A man hearing or seeing something is a fact. If I see something, if I hear something, it is a fact. A man uttering words is a fact. A man holding a certain opinion, having certain intention, acting in good faith or in a fraudulent manner, or using particular word in a particular sense, and being or having been conscious of a particular sensation at a given time is a fact. All these things are fact. A man having a certain reputation is also a fact. This can be a mental condition or a psychological internal fact. The last example is psychological fact. Then fact can be divided into two parts, into two types. Fact in issue, it is also called as factum probandum, and relevant fact, that is factum probans or evidentiary fact. It is also called as evidentiary fact. Fact in issue is the bone of contention, the main issue over which a case has been filed, a main issue over which two parties are fighting the case. So that is the fact in issue. It will decide whether a person is guilty or not, the fact in issue. Now, relevant fact are those facts which generally help court to judge whether fact in issue is present or not. For example, facts that are subject of judicial inquiry and form fulcrum of adjudication. A fact may not be only object of perception by any one of the five senses, but also subject of consciousness. So relevant fact is any fact. For example, A murdered B. Then whether A murdered B will be the bone of contention. Both the parties will be fighting over this fact. Now, if A had gun in his pocket, A was very angry, A was saying to somebody that I will murder B, these are relevant fact. These are relevant fact which will help fact in issue to be proved or disproved. Similarly, we will discuss about these two facts in next slide also in detail, because this is the most important concept of Indian Evidence Act or in law of evidence. So just understand the meaning of these terms. Thank you. In the next slide, we'll be discussing fact in issue in detail and relevant fact also in detail. Thank you.